Hi, everybody. Sorry we're 5 minutes late. This is Jen Wilson, and with me today is Amy Vetter. I missed the deadline on the Facebook cutoff, so we are 5 minutes late, but hopefully you're here and got the message in social media that we were going to begin our lunch chat slightly off the hour. We're excited to be here to talk about leadership ideas, and one of the big things that Amy and I thought that we should cover today was what appears to be the rising sense of panic. That's the word that Amy used, so I'm going to let her talk about it. But the rising sense of panic around the impending busy season or peak period coming up. So maybe you start, Amy, and I'll jump in.
Yeah, I think, and when I use the word panic, I'm saying it also because with good reason, there is the panic, of all that we've already known from the past year. And I think busy season is one of those times when we get anxious anyways, because we know there's a lot of work ahead. We're going to be, kind of shut down from maybe a lot of the personal stuff we normally do, because busy season's going to be happening. But then there is like PTSD from last year between, busy season and PPP coming out, and now it's happening all over again. So, I'm hearing over and over again this sense of fear, of stress, breakdowns of, team members and, coming to management and stuff like that. And so we need to figure out from a leadership perspective how to handle this, as well as from a personal perspective of how we get ourselves centered and still and focused when we know we have a lot coming ahead of us.
Definitely. And let's just start from a leadership perspective for a moment. Tone at the top matters. And we know this. We all know this. This is one of those moments where we know it, but we might not be doing it. So, sounding panicked, sounding like you dread what's coming, sounding like it's impossible, sounding like we can't find good people, or the partners are working harder than they ever have, and this is going to be terrible, and saying things like that, all that does is create this sense of corporate dread, community dread. And leaders at the top have to feel like they have a strategy. They have to feel like they have a plan. They need to feel like they have hope and they believe in what we're doing. And they need to get back to sort of core purpose and remember what their job is. And their job is not to point out problems. We're not in the problem pointing outing business. We can do that. That's an easy thing. We need to talk about solutions and talk about possibilities and be open to entertain some different ideas to solve some of these problems. But we've got to pay attention to who we're being as leaders. And I've been having a number of phone calls with leaders who, with other people witnessing on the call, have gone into big, long, panicked tirades that don't work. They're not going to get people the sense of peace and focus and commitment that's required to get this work done.
Yeah. So a couple of things on that is, first thing as a leader is to use your resources. So if you are not good at conversations on feelings and emotions and stress, and you know that about yourself, there are HR people to go to in your firm. And it is really important that you're talking to the resources that you need to either support you in the conversations you need to have to help guide you, or to send those people to somebody that can have that conversation and do it in a way that is non-judgmental, which leads me to the second part is, if someone is coming to you with emotion, it is very important that you aren't judging the person for feeling the way that they do. That if they've surfaced it, there's a problem, whether it's them, the work environment, whatever it is. So rather than getting to the point of like, oh, these people can't handle it, and and so forth, or using that maybe that at a moment of weakness, someone on your team did divulge their weakness, their vulnerability, their fear, that you don't use it against them either into the future, because the only way to create a generous culture, an open culture, is to listen and maybe not respond, is, just take in the information without judgment and come back with actionable steps. Maybe also do your own research with others to see if this is an isolated issue in the department, and then this is like the only person bringing this up, or are there other people not bringing it up because they don't feel empowered to, or for fear of being blamed later or branded later for doing it. So this is the time that you can shine as a leader. And then thirdly, I would just say, take care of yourself. So sometimes when we react to others, it's because we're feeling the stress and anxiety ourselves, and we can't put one more thing on our plate. We don't want one more excuse from somebody. And it's very hard for us to be nurturing to somebody else when we're not nurturing ourselves. So, it's important to take the wellness breaks and so forth throughout the day, just to get yourself back. If that means calling someone you love, if that means listening to music, if that means meditation, if that means taking a walk, whatever it is, to just get yourself reset. Because the whole point of being a leader is to make the people that report to you better. And if they're not better, I had a violin teacher that used to say, if you're no good, I'm no good. And that's always something that's been in my head, is if my staff isn't doing well, I'm not doing well as a leader.
Right. Well, and there are real concrete strategies to right size what we have and what we're facing. So we can move work into later periods. We can fire clients even at this late date. We could send clients, especially the ones that aren't a cultural fit or just don't fit our model. They could go to another provider this spring. You can take an emergency measure and do that. You can go out and find outsource resources that have fractional resources and staff available to help augment your people. One of the things that some of the leaders I've talked to is they're like, I don't want to discuss this with my staff person who I can tell is stressing out because I can't really move any of her work. And I'm like, you will move all of her work when she quits. When she quits.
Exactly.
I mean, it's all moving. So how about we move some of it, or just, and sometimes it's going back to clients and saying, it on the tax side, we're going to have to extend you. And extending, I had one guy characterize extensions as, we're going to have to file you late this year. And I said, no, that's not what it is. It's we're spreading our work across the year, and we would like to extend your return to do it in the summer and fall. It's not we're filing it late.
Right.
And so it's positioning with the clients, but you've got to move the work. You can't just, let your people suffer under an unbearable burden and not provide some sort of relief. And denial is not a strategy. So, not talking about it, not facing it, because we just don't want to do any of the hard changes necessary. That's not an option. And for many firms, you're pretty well organized for this busy season and you're going to be fine, but you still need to keep that dialogue open for the isolated cases where they really are underwater. Other firms had a lot of turnover in December and in January, and they aren't fine. They don't have enough people hours for the work, and you've got to undertake some of these hard but doable strategies to move the work so that you're not pretending that you have enough resource, because you don't.
Exactly. And then I would say from the staff perspective, because it's always, twofold, is to understand that your manager or leader does have, you may be thinking this is all their world because that's your world, but they've got a lot of other things that they're trying to balance. So figure out Two, understanding someone's personality, and maybe their energy. Research when is the best time to have these discussions. So it's not right when everybody's chaotic and crazy and then you're having a breakdown as well, because the response you're going to get is not the response you want. So think about your timing for this conversation. Think about a dedicated amount of time, not just tacking it on to maybe another issue. And also be aware that there may not be the solution you want, but if you can at least see that they're taking it in and they do care and they're trying to figure out a better way for you, take the help. But the communication is important, because I feel like a lot of these conversations I have with staff people is they think someone should just know. And we have to understand that each of us go through our day in our world. And so we're not thinking about what's happening with each person and what your world is. So it's not a bad thing. It's not that someone doesn't care. But if you do want change, you've got to start somewhere with communication.
And I couldn't agree more about this idea that, you think someone should know, but maybe no one knows. And I think that that's almost always the story in all forms of communication. But in this case, if you foresee real significant problems for you coming, you have to tell somebody. And one of the frameworks that we always recommend people use if they're trying to figure out how do I phrase this, or what's the best language to use, I like to organize my thoughts using keep, stop, start. So if I'm overwhelmed, I may sit down and say, here's some things I'm going to keep doing. Here's some things that have to stop. And it might be I need to stop working on these 30 things and move them to someone else or whatever. Mm-hmm. It could just be we need to stop having as many administrative meetings during this time period. I don't think the firm is cognizant of how many we're having or something. It could be, the stops could be sort of all different. I don't know what they would be, and then starts. So what do I need to keep doing that's working? What do I need to stop doing that isn't going to work, that isn't working now or isn't going to work as we get into this really peak period? And then what do we need to start doing? And if you listed 3 of each, that's a good framework to go in and talk to your manager or leader or supervisor and say, hey, I've been thinking about busy season, and I have to confess, I'm concerned about resource and I'm concerned about my own load. And I was trying to think about how to organize my thoughts, and I'd like to take you through this keep, stop, start framework and make some suggestions, but I'm not making demands. I want to collaborate with you, and let's use this framework. And I think the person you speak to would be so appreciative that you did the thinking beforehand, right? Instead of just coming and saying, I can't take it anymore, or whatever, which many of us sometimes want to say. That's just unloading without really offering up specifics, because I'm not even asking you to necessarily develop the exact solution, but just pointing out what part of what you have needs to change. Yes. Is so helpful with specificity, because then they can get into action to support you.
Yeah, I think it's so important to come with some ideas, because that turns from what someone might perceive as complaining to that you want to make it work. You're just, in a spot that you need their help, you need their guidance. And it's very important in how you phrase, those things as you approach meetings like this, that, like you said, not making demands and so forth. The other thing that I think is important, and it's hard work, and this is whether you're a leader or a staff person, but, you talked about quitting, and a lot of times the answer may be that. But I think before you get there, sometimes you have to step back and assess, is this a pattern with me that repeats no matter what job I'm in at a certain point, that I do start feeling overwhelmed? And how does that actually happen for me? So, I'll use myself as an example. I'm like many of us, very type A. And I will put the pressure on myself,
Yes.
and then will feel disappointed if I'm not pleasing everyone, but I don't really know if someone else expected that of me. I assume it. But a lot of times in conversations that I have with team members, it becomes very clear in the conversation that no one put the demand on you or that timeline on you. It was an internal expectation that you put on yourself because you want to achieve, you want to do well, you want to excel. And those are kind of the real introspective conversations that are important to have with yourself to really understand where the pressure is coming from and maybe what you can let go of.
Oh, for sure. I love that. And I think, not only do we maybe put, self-imposed pressure or expectations, but other people do ask us to do things.
Mm-hmm.
And you can call that them putting pressure on us. But we have the power of no.
Yes.
And so for a lot of us, we're not just type A, overachievers. We also want to please people.
Mm-hmm.
And they say, will you? And we say yes. And we give too many yeses. And at some point, your yeses become false yeses. They're physically impossible to achieve. And then you get yourself caught in this jam that's very, defeating and upsetting. And what you said at the top of this idea, Amy, about, before you quit, look and see if this is like a pattern you're perpetuating in your life, and you're doing it. Maybe you did it in school, first, and you found yourself like overcommitted in college or something. And then, now you're finding it in your jobs and it's following you. That little black cloud's going to go to the next place too. The false yes, overcommit, beat yourself up, make others wrong, so like stopping and saying, I have said too many yeses. I need some no's. I'm going to have to move things. I'm going to have to say, no, not now. Or yes, I can do this, but later. The whole idea of extensions.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
you have a realistic expectation and timeline for when you can do something if you're going to say yes.
Yeah, 100%. So I do think that that's a real, that's many of our challenges in the overwhelm is that. And that's an institutional firm leader thing too. Mm-hmm. I mean, we said too many yeses that got us in this jam. Or I mean, seriously, we sold too many things. We started too many initiatives. There are corporate overcommitments, and then there are individual overcommitments. So both need to be looked at because, we may have to take an entire initiative and back burner it. I was with a group last week, future leaders who are driving a ton of change in their firm, and it's very exciting. And they said, hey, what would you think if we pushed this particular project to like summer? And I was like, I would be so proud of you. And I think when they asked me, they were like wondering if I was going to be disappointed that they weren't going to do it. And I was like, I think that that's so smart because then you can be thoughtful about it. It won't be this, it's a proactive initiative. You don't need to do it. And you are about to get into a little bit of emergency management mode. And you already have enough initiatives. So by all means, I just was so proud of them for pushing it.
Yeah.
And, but I could tell by the way they raised it that they were kind of tiptoeing up to the idea, thinking I was going to go, no, you guys can do it, And so as leaders, when our people are saying, hey, what do you think if we move this? Don't be, listen to why. Really look at it. Don't try to just jam it in. And then if you're the one that thinks you need to move it, don't hesitate to ask because the person you're going to raise it to might be relieved.
Yeah.
They're trying to maybe please you with the initiative, and the minute you say, could we change the timing of this or could I move this to Susan or whatever, they might be all over the yes on that. They might think, yeah, by all means.
Yeah. So I would just kind of close this discussion with saying from a firm leadership perspective, if you haven't heard people say this, don't think it's not happening right now. We work outside of your firms and are hearing it every day. There is a pressure cooker happening right now. And so be proactive, about this topic right now, and don't put your head in the sand about it, or don't think it's a touchy-feely thing. That this is a really important discussion and actionable thing that needs to happen right now, before things get too crazy. And it doesn't take major decision making or major meetings to do something about it. There's quick things you can do that will just give people relief and understanding that you notice, you care, you're there for them, and you want them to feel good as we're coming into the next few months.
I agree. And I think another little piece of that communication should be an acknowledgement that we have had a strange 2.5 years. And, yes, we have busy seasons, but we haven't had anything like this. The 2019 Tax Act, the pandemic, CARES, PPP 1 and 2. We've never had any. It's unprecedented. I know everybody hates that word, but it is. I mean, we haven't seen anything like this. And to say that to people so they know we don't expect to have our lives be like this. This isn't normal for our business model. And if it starts to be every year, we have massive legislation and massive, disruption to our normal workflows, we're going to have to change our business model. We're not going to persist like this. And if you just say that transparently and openly and honestly, it will bring relief to, especially the young people don't know. They don't have the 10 years before that to compare it to. And they're looking at this current model and thinking, oh my gosh, this is like working in an ER.
Yeah.
I picked accounting because I thought that it would be like orderly. This is like working in an ER. And so just another part of that acknowledgement and communicating. And Sam Mansfield was out here saying, hey, be transparent and be open. And I would just add, and be in front of your people the whole way along this spring, not just a one and done. Just stay with those group communications and acknowledging the circumstances and committing to help and being open to feedback.
Yeah.
So anyway, I love this topic and I'm glad we brought it up, and I hope that it causes some calm to come over you and some resolve to get in action. Thanks, Amy, for a great opportunity to see you again. And thanks everybody for tuning in.
Have a great weekend.